Okay, I'm back. Um, this video is going to be the introduction to the new series, which I'm calling The Critical Eye. Um, it's not very clever, but it's a tiny bit clever. It is my list of 51 of my favorite critics, whether it be political, artistic, literary, social, or just in general cultural critics. 51 sounds like a lot, but it's not exhaustive uh, pertaining to the critics that I read or that I have read. I'm not pretending to be a scholar on any one of these given authors. Some of them I've read extensively. Some of them I've read, um, a fair amount, and then some I've read like one or two essays only. But there are probably like 25 other critics I could have put on the list. Additionally, some of them I didn't because I don't have their books in front of me or I don't have access to their books right now. Some of them just because, not necessarily because they're not like more insightful as critics, but because they're mostly usually because they're mostly are literary critics and what they wrote about is not going to be like relevant today. Although I don't think that's a big like hit against them as far as critics goes. It's just like we don't read what they've read. So I can introduce them to you guys, but I don't know if you will be motivated to read them. So like big names too, like some people like I took off the list, and just because I also wanted to limit this to like 50, but I ended up making it 51. So I could have put Henry James on this list. He's not on the list. I could have put Toynbee on this list. He's not on the list. I could have put CLR James on this list. He's not on the list. I could have put Edgar Allan Poe on this list. He's not on the list. And so those are pretty big names. Anyway, so I'll get on with it. I'm going to show you. So this is my list of the authors in the order and then chronological order from when they were born uh, that I've chosen. The bullet point shows the publication, the book, or the source. Yeah, it's always going to be the book. And then the bottom here shows the article or the essay. And you can see how many pages. So part of this series is going to be me reading and commenting a little bit, not too much, as I read the essays. Um, and maybe like commenting as far as like clearing things up for you or giving definitions of words or maybe like yeah identifying certain allusions or references. And if there's something he said that I think like maybe it might be important to point out and make sure we all catch the meaning, I might say something in that regard. Okay. But again, it's just this series is mostly to introduce you to uh essays that you might not have heard, you might not have read, even if it's like a big time name like Samuel Johnson, like John Ruskin, or lesser known critics. All right, so I'll get on with it. So the first one is Samuel Johnson, 1709 to 1784. I am using this big monster of a book. Uh, this is going to be where I'm getting Marriage, Men, and Women, just 4 pages. Well, 5 pages actually. 102, 103, 104, 105, and 106. That's 5 pages. I had to check. So yeah, I have this book. Nice thick book, hardcover. I love it. Okay, next next critic. By the way, a lot of these authors are not by profession critics or not primarily critics or not foremost critics. Some are historians, right? Some are journalists. Some are just authors. Uh, some are economists and whatnot. But so they're on this list uh, as critics, right? So and that's another reason why some authors like that are big name that are not here because they're just not as well known for their critical work. Okay, so next one, John Ruskin. I have this book here. It's a Ford's Clavigera. This is Ruskin's works. I think this series is a 4 volume series. I don't have the first 2 volumes. I'm not too interested in them. but the last two volumes are his Force Clavigera, which are his letters, 96 letters that he wrote to the English public, kind of like to instruct them of how to live their lives, how to improve their lives economically, morally, and educationally, and things like that. So that's where I'm so, and the essay we're going to look at is Looking Down from Ingleborough. This one's 14 pages. It is going to be a lengthy read. I'm kind of worried because I'm not the best reader. I kind of mumble and trip up over my words sometimes. So, and I don't have the most, like, I don't, sonorous voice for reading. Anyway, I'm going to give it my best shot. And also I don't do editing, so whatever my misspeaking or my mumbling or my tripping over my words, like at some point it's just going to have to be part of the video, because I'm not going to edit it out and I'm not going to make multiple tapings. Although each video after this one will be just one critic. Like I'll just do like Samuel Johnson, I'll read the Marriage, Men and Women one, and then that's it. And then I'll make another video for, yeah, for John Ruskin and so on. Okay, Lord Acton. This is the book I'm using for Lord Acton, Historical and Moral Essays. I'm going to choose The American Revolution as the essay. I've read all these essays, by the way. Like, I've selected them. I'm curating essays for you. Part of it is I thought they're good essays. Part of it, I thought it's going to give you a good, like, taste, let's say, of the authors in question, like how they write, and relatively short, right? Relatively short. Some of them are as short as 2 or 3 pages, and some of them are as long as like 16, 17 pages, but that's it. Like that, those are the limits. And so for most of them, like I would say 9 to 12 pages. So Lord Acton, super well known, super erudite. Yeah. Um, okay, so I think Gertrude Himmelfarb did her dissertation on Lord Acton, and she has books. Oh, she has at least one book on Lord Acton that I know of, that I think I have coming in the mail. Okay, George Bernard Shaw, another big time critic, another very well read, erudite guy, polemical guy. Major cultural essays, and I'm reading Nietzsche in English. I like choosing essays where the critics that I'm reading talk about authors that I also enjoy. So I like, to me, I could put Nietzsche on the list. I didn't, because as a critic, right? Nietzsche as a social critic, or yeah, but he's more a philosopher, and I think it would just take more to explain Nietzsche's thought than this series is kind of like tailored for. And again, somebody has to get excluded, or this list could have easily doubled in size, and I don't want that. I'm already thinking 51 is too much. G.K. Chesterton, monster, a beast of an intellectual, a monster of a writer. Uh, yeah, he wrote about a bunch of different. He's an author of novels. He's a Christian apologetics, a historian. He wrote like a young adult Father Brown series, and he's a critic. And so this is the book I'm using. It's a nice little hardback. Um, I don't know if it ever had a cover. I'm assuming not. The essay I'm choosing is on gargoyles. Okay. Some of these essays I've read again recently, just to make sure, like, they're essays that I want to show you. Some of them I read anew and I liked them. The authors I had read already, but I read new essays by them, and then I'm like, okay, I'll choose that one. It's new. So I've done a bunch of reading this last week or two. H.L. Mencken, uh, another polemical guy, another very like prolific writer, someone I don't necessarily agree with politically, but there's still a lot to learn from Mencken. There's still a lot to enjoy. This is the Mencken Christomathy, and the essay I wrote is The Feminine Mind. This is going to sound a little, to our modern ears, it's going to sound a little misogynistic. It's not, right? They say the same thing about Nietzsche, that he was a misogynist. He's not, right? It's just they spoke differently about women back in the days, and women were different back in the days. So like his observations, like, it's hard to fault them for their observations. But anyway, you'll get a taste of the essays when we get to it. Uh, Ludwig von Mises. I have several von Mises book, but the essay that I'm getting from him is from this anthology, uh, Plain Talk, an anthology from the leading anti-communist magazine of the 40s, from the 40s. And the essay is The Philosophy of the Pseudo Progressives, right? Anyway, he says pseudo because they're not real progressives, they're communists, but they call themselves progressives. So he calls them pseudo progressives, which I think he's right to do. Okay, Wyndham Lewis, not too well known anymore. I'm using this source as Enemy Salvos, and he writes about the Russians. It's not as straight up political as you might think. It's yeah. So Enemy Salvos, the Russians, and good essay. Okay, Isabel Patterson's book. I don't have Isabel Patterson's. I have a copy of her book, but I don't have it with me. It's at my sister's house. God of the Machine, highly recommended book, by the way. This is one of my favorite books of all time. God of the Machine. She just expounds and explains her philosophy, her political philosophy so well here. Uh, anyway, so God of the Machine, and I chose the essay "The Power of Ideas," not necessarily because it's the best, but it's one of the few that fell within like the 15 pages limitation. But it's still good. It's still good. Okay. Frank Chodorov. I'm using Fugitive Essays and The Dogma of Our Times. That's the essay I've chosen for him to introduce you to. You can see it's like 7 pages long. Edmund Wilson. Edmund Wilson is another very prolific writer. I'm using this little book here, The American Earthquake. Book galleries and bookshops. Since I like book galleries and bookshops, I thought I'd choose an essay that talks about it. E.B. White. I have this little book. I also have the hard copy version. Like I had forgotten that I had this book, and no, I knew I had this. I knew I had a book by E.B. White, but I didn't remember the title, and so I picked up the hardcover, which looks very, very much different than this, and so I ended up having 2 copies. Anyway, Riposte, 2 pages, 60 and 61. So nice. This will be a nice, easy read. Okay. Walcott Gibbs, backwards ran sentences. He's addressing non-graduates. We are gathered here right today and so on, but that's the whole title. I didn't leave out any words. And so this is going to be Walcott Gibbs. I'm choosing from this book. George Orwell, prodigious writer, author, Mr. Anti-Totalitarianism, but I have chosen this from this book, this collection of essays, and I'm going to read Reflections on Gandhi. Okay, that's 10 pages. Okay, that was a good read. Evelyn Waugh. I need to check. I need to grab this book from the bottom here. Sorry. Evelyn Waugh. I've got this anthology. This is another anthology of a popular magazine from the magazine called Encounter. It was called Encounter, and it was a good magazine. So anyway, there's a few selections I've taken from this book. I don't like. It's not a straight up Evelyn Waugh book. Evelyn Waugh's son, Auberon Waugh, is also a critic. I left him off the list. Originally, I put him on, but as I started to find the books and other authors or other critics, I'm like, somebody's got to get chopped off. So Auberon Waugh, interesting read. I recommend you look into Auberon Waugh. Anyway, this is Evelyn Waugh, super famous. And I've chosen An Open Letter to the Honorable Mrs. Peter Rodd, which is Nancy Mitford, on a very serious subject. I was going to introduce you to the essay that she's responding to, but I don't think there's a need. And Nancy Mitford is nowhere near as popular as Evelyn Waugh was. So, okay, that's the book. Lionel Trilling, another very well-known writer during his time, another big-time critic. The Moral Obligation to be Intelligent. And he writes about the America of John Dos Passos. Obviously, Dos Passos is a monster author. Everybody knows Dos Passos. He wrote USA, the trilogy. And then, so Trilling on Dos Passos. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to read that essay and also share it with you. Dwight MacDonald, another very, very well known during his time, but no longer read. Memoirs of a Revolutionist. 2 footnotes to history. Very short, 3 pages. So I appreciate the very short ones that are available to share. Isaiah Berlin, another monster, prolific, big time brain, big time mind, lots to select from. I'm choosing from The Power of Ideas, and he writes about liberty. Okay. Oh, we have to go to 51. We're only on 19. Edward Shills. This is from Encounter. It's that same big anthology I showed you. So Encounter also has the essay by Shields, British intellectuals. A lot of these critics are really like they're down on intellectuals. They like intellectuals betray society, betray the common man, and just generally get things wrong. And this is no exception. Edward Shields on British intellectuals. Another one encounters Eric Heller. Eric Heller, somewhat philosophically inclined, and he wrote about Ludwig Wittgenstein. And Wittgenstein is one of my top 3 philosophers, so I couldn't pass up reading the essay on Wittgenstein to you guys. This one's a bit lengthy. It's like 16 pages. Is one of the longest ones. So I don't know how I'm going to keep your attention for that, but we'll see. Ralph Ellison. Everybody knows Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man. Good critic too. He has a very entertaining essay, very insightful stuff. Beating that boy. Beat that boy. Anyway, beating that boy, Ralph Ellison. Robert Nisbet, big time. Well, maybe not so big time, but he's very well known as a critic and as Twilight of Authority, The New Corruption. So I have this Nisbet book. That's the essay. Not too long, 4 pages. Alfred Kazan, several options for books, many options for essays. Obviously, this is the book, Alfred Kazan's America: Critical and Personal Writings. And another one of my favorite authors, which I didn't put on this list, is Hannah Arendt, The Burden of Our Time. Right, Hannah Arendt is also Mrs. Anti-Totalitarianism. George Orwell is like Mr. Anti-Totalitarianism. Okay. Elizabeth Hardwick, Big Brain Lady, The Collected Essays of Elizabeth Hardwick. I chose Nabokov Masterclass, and of course, Nabokov is one of my top 10 favorite authors. Just a stylist with the English language, and yeah. So when they write on people that I read or that I read a lot or that I like or enjoy, or just like I like choosing those essays. As I keep saying, Leslie Fiedler, An End to Innocence. Leslie Fiedler is a very controversial professor and critic during his day. This is the book I have. I have a lot of Fiedler books, but anyway, The Good American, 6 pages long. Yeah, that's going to be pretty short. Okay. Irvin Howe. Irvin Howe publishes a lot of stuff, or has published a lot of stuff, or published a lot of stuff. This is The Voice Still Heard, Selected Essays of Irving Howe. Doris Lessing, No Compromise, No Happiness. Doris Lessing is another author or critic I left off. I could have easily put her on this list. But sometimes it's just the nature. Sometimes, like, for example, Doris Lessing has good criticism, but the selections were all like 20 pages, 25 pages long. And so I wasn't going to be able to really choose one. That's a lot of reading. I don't know, like, who's going to sit down and listen to me, or who's going to want to sit down and listen to me or watch me read for 25 pages. I think even 15 pages is like pushing it. But okay, like, that's generally why I had to choose the cutoff. One of my favorite all-time critics, big brain lady, big smart lady, the new history and the old, critical essays and reappraisals, who now reads, that should not say read, that should say who now reads Macaulay, and the answer is nobody. Right? Nobody reads Macaulay anymore. Anyway, but yeah, we'll get an appreciation for her perspective on whether Macaulay should still be read or why he's not read as much anymore. Okay. This is gonna all tumble to the ground, I fear. But okay, we'll continue. William Gass. I have this book on order. It's coming, so I don't have to show you. It's in the mail. But I have the essay on PDF. So it's from The Habitations of the Word, and the essay is called On Talking to Oneself. He has also other essay called On Reading to Oneself. It's kind of like quirky titles, but it's good stuff. William Gass. Book is in the mail. William Styron. This book by William Styron. Havana's and Camelot. Slavery's Pain, Disney's Gain. Oh, shots fired at Disney. Deservedly so. Yeah, we'll read what he has to say. Good stuff. Hilton Kramer is mostly known to me as an editor, but he was a critic, just kind of like Roger Kimball. Roger Kimball's another one who I left off the list, who I actually really enjoy. Roger Kimball was the editor of the New Criterion, one of my favorite publications, magazines, or yeah, yeah, of all time. But I didn't put him on the list. This is the Revenge of the Philistines. The Philistines always get their revenge in the end, right? Anyway, this is on the failure of the museum. So Kramer's a big time art critic, and so that's the essay on the failure of the museums. Where do I want to put this? I'll put this to the side here. Okay, Cynthia Ozick, another very serious, very deep writer, um, critic, monsters and fanatics, and other literary essays. I write because I hate William Gass, right? So she's quoting something Gass said, so she's going to write about what Gass said. So we just saw William Gass, and right, and actually, this is how I got introduced to William Gass. I was reading some of Ozick's essays to figure out which one I wanted to choose, find something that's kind of short, and I saw this one, so I read it, and I'm like, oh, William Gass guy seems interesting. Yeah, that's how it goes. Okay, Harold Bloom, big time known critic, also known for like producing or defending the Western canon and publishing the Western canon. I forget with which publisher. Um, yeah, very eloquent. And this is a 2-page essay, Miguel de Cervantes. So he basically he just gives you a little tiny bit on Cervantes, his opinions, his thoughts, and then he kind of tries to intrigue you into reading Cervantes, and he does it very well with the two pages. But again, it's Cervantes. Everybody knows Cervantes. Okay, let's continue to. Let me slide this over here. Sorry, Thomas Sowell. I have more Sowell books than I have of any other author. And next one in line would be maybe Joseph Epstein, and then Gertrude Himmelfarb, and then besides Nietzsche, I have a ton of Nietzsche books too. But like those four, I have the most books of published by. Education, Assumptions versus History, The Intellect of the Intellectuals. Again, the theme of the intellectuals, what imbeciles they really are. Okay, so that's Thomas Sowell. Highly recommended. One of my all-time favorites. John Updike, beautiful writer, excellent criticism. This is More Matter. More Matter? Yeah. More Matter, Essays and Criticism. Books that changed my life. So you'll get to like read or listen to which books were significant in his life. Right. Which is always interesting, especially with somebody of like Updike's education and background. V.S. Naipaul, monster thinker, very good writer, very clear writer, very lucid writer. This is The Writer in the World, essays, Columbus and Caruso. Right. I have an interest in Christopher Columbus, and Caruso. Obviously, everybody knows Caruso, Robinson Crusoe, and so yeah, essays on that. Short, 5 pages. Simon Leys, which I have not read enough of. I've read several essays of his. The Hall of Uselessness, and he's famous for like writing about China. But he's a cultural critic and literary critic. This is The Imitation of Our Lord Don Quixote. So another one, right? With Harold Bloom wrote about Cervantes, and now Simon Leys is writing about Don Quixote. Okay, obviously, so, monster topic. Walter Williams, Walter Williams is an economist, kind of like Thomas Sowell's an economist, but they write about race matters. They write about political policy. They write about cultural criticism, social criticism, and whatnot. American Contempt for Liberty. Academic cesspools. Again, academia is garbage. The liberals have taken over academia, and now it is a cesspool indoctrinating idiots voting for Kamala Harris. Okay. Joseph Epstein. Again, Joseph Epstein, I have at least 12 of his books. The novel Who Needs It. This doesn't have a title. The titles in this book, the book is divided into major sections, and within those sections, there are different like topics, and so there's no real title. So it's from chapter 1, pages 3 through 5. You just have to wait to see what it's about. Epstein is a kind of a light-hearted critic, doesn't take himself too seriously, but he's erudite. He reads. He's well read. Okay, Clive James, another masterful essayist, another masterful writer. His prose is just great prose. Cultural Amnesia, Necessary Memories from History and the Arts. And he wrote on G.K. Chesterton, right, which was one of my favorites. I said it already, and he's early on the list. So G.K. Chesterton, who is not read much anymore. Okay, these are stacking, but these are like precariously stacked here. All right, George F. Will. I've recently come across George F. Will. I just picked up this book at a used bookstore and like, oh, it looks interesting. And I remember reading something, and I think he had a quote by G.K. Chesterton. So I'm like, okay, I like this guy already. And so then so I read this book. I haven't read this book, but I read a couple of essays, and the essay that I chose is "A World of Crushingly Particular Experiences." Right. Okay, so we have that. I'll put this to the side here. Christopher Hitchens, Mr. Obstreperous, Mr. Irreverent, Mr. Terrible argument sometimes. Like his hit piece on Mother Teresa was just shameful. Like it's just nonsense. Like I would be embarrassed to have that attributed to me as far as my intellectual thought. But Hitchens is very well read. He's polemic, which I enjoy. He's irreverent, which I don't mind, as long as you have arguments to back it up. You can be as irreverent as you want. So he wrote a lot against the church. Some of the things he said, kind of like, okay, you got somewhat of a point here, but some of the stuff is like a bit of a stretch, or you just have to have his biases to kind of agree with him. But yeah, anyway. But the Divine One, Christopher Hitchens, the Divine One, short, very short. Okay, Theodore Dalrymple. Theodore Dalrymple, that's a pseudonym or pseudonym. I don't really remember. I never remember his real name, but it doesn't matter. I always call him Dalrymple. Dalrymple is along the lines of Epstein. He writes about serious stuff too, but he also has a sense of humor, and yeah, it comes through. And this is an ugly book title cover, but anyway, Spoiled Rotten, Generation Alpha. Okay, Generation Alpha. Melanie Phillips. I could not leave Melanie Phillips off, although I've only read a few of her essays and I only have this one book of hers. And a lot of the guys, I only have one book. Or right, The World Turned Upside Down: Cults and Conspiracies from Diana to Obama. Right, as I'm making this video, I just finished in the background hearing Obama's speech. I don't know what he said. I didn't listen to them, but anyway, yeah. So, um, Sven Burkhardt. This is The Other Walk, and this is just walking with my friend, right? So like obviously it's going to be personal experience, anecdotal stuff. Maybe not anecdotal so much, but yeah. James Walcott. I have this book, Critical Mass: 4 Decades of Essays, Reviews, Hand Grenades, and Hurrahs by Doubleday. The Rand Inquisitor. The Rand Inquisitor. Not the Grand. The Rand, as in Ayn Rand. If my memory doesn't, I don't want, I didn't put publisher here, but if I type it, I feel like I'm going to knock down these books that I've stacked, so I'm going to leave it alone. Daniel Mendelsohn. Mendelsohn is a classicist, I think, by his background as a classicist. I think he's done some translations of like the Iliad and the Odyssey. One of the translations of some ancient text like that. Anyway, critic, very good critic. Lost in Versailles, right? So that's this one. And the book is How Beautiful It Is and How Easily It Can Be Broken. Okay, sounds a little harrowing. David Foster Wallace. Everybody knows David Foster Wallace. He had a cult following. I was never part of that following, but I like him. I have several books of his, and I put him on my list. So if you like, some people always not I don't hate on David Foster Wallace. I just don't think he deserves the hype that he'd gotten. But yeah, supposedly fun thing I'll never do again. This is his essay called Greatly Exaggerated, which is an allusion to the famous line by Mark Twain when he was told that he was in the obituaries. He said something like, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. That's probably a slight paraphrase, but that's the allusion. And it kind of connects. So anyway, B.R. Myers, probably the least known author here, and this is really the only book I ever read of his. It's a Reader's Manifesto. One of my favorite little books. Like, if I had to read 100 books over and over again, this would be one of them. Anyway, generic literary prose. He breaks things down into how contemporary authors are basically like producing garbage. And one of the themes is generic literary prose. And this is also the shortest essay in this book, so I chose that one. James Wood. Serious Noticing, Selected Essays, 1997 to 2019. He's still alive, as you can see. And Becoming Them, right? Who's them? And who are we becoming? Okay. We'll have to find out. Two more, and the last two are Adam Kirsch. This is from Rocket and Lightship. I always think I'm mispronouncing it. No, it's Lightship. Um, Francis Fukuyama and the Beginning of History, right? Francis Fukuyama is a well-known historian. He recently put out a new book. I think it's something like The Origins of Civilization or something like that. Yeah, Fukuyama's a big time name, big time uh, author. And finally, Michael Malice, The White Pill, A Tale of Good and Evil. And I chosen the essay that the book was basically named after, The White Pill. Um, Good stuff, good political theory, good social commentary. That's it. Those are okay. Now let me see. Sorry, I'm gonna move it because it's already bugging me that I didn't write the word publisher where I wanted to have publisher. I don't even know if that's important, but I like anyway. I put it. Excuse me, pardon me. Um, okay, where was it? There was one where I didn't write publisher. Here it is. Publisher, publisher, double day. Okay, that's it. Yeah, yeah. So these are the 51 critics. Now I'll switch over and show you. I have a little. Why can't I? I have small bios of them, very brief bios, mostly generated with ChatGPT, and then I kind of like edited them to make them like just this length, right? I don't know if I'm gonna introduce you to this stuff. Like maybe when I start the Samuel Johnson, I'll give you a little brief bio, and then I will go back and then tell you, okay, this is the book I'm choosing, this is the essay, and then I'll have notes. I'll have like my notes. Like if I had to look up some words, I'll put the definitions on there. Again, if there's allusions, I'll try to I'll try to figure out what those allusions are and what's the meaning of the comment given the allusion. Um, yeah, so it's just annotate, right? Basically, I'm annotating to facilitate the reading for you. But again, this is not meant to be that scholarly. It's just let me introduce you to Samuel Johnson. This is what he has to say on this topic, and then you can like listen to his voice, basically, uh, through the terrible medium of my voice. Anyway, so that's it. All right. Um, yeah, I've been rethinking about which some of these authors that I've left off the list, like like a recent like some I thought like I can't put them on the list, not because they're not good critics, just because there's no way that they could replace anybody that I have on the list. Like for example, Christy Wampole, interesting critic. I think I think she teaches at Princeton right now. But like, who do I remove to put Christy Wampole on there? Now, when it comes to like CLR James, like I could easily put CLR James and take somebody off who I think is not as like insightful or as renowned or as just like enjoyable to read. But I don't have my CLR James. I don't have my CLR James reader book. I don't know if I'm gonna find it. If I dig it up, I'll put CLR James back on the list and maybe take somebody off or just extend the list to like eventually 60. But anyway, I don't think it matters. 50, 60, who cares? Nobody's gonna watch the series. Nobody's gonna sit there and watch 60 videos of me reading with my monotone, mumbly voice. Okay. Um, yeah, that's it. So that's coming. That's upcoming, and it'll be one video at a time per um, critic. All right. If you have any suggestions as to like critics, but again, realize that I already have like 25 other critics in mind that I could put on this list. So if you say like, oh, you have to put like Henry James on here, or you have to put like Coleridge on there, yeah, I understand, I sympathize, but I've considered them, and for one reason or another, either either they're strictly literary critics, which I have a hard time putting on there, even though I like literary criticism. I think it'll be less enjoyable for the readers, depending on like what they write about, or their essays are just too long, or their essays are not very accessible just because of like how old they are, or just the style that they wrote, or just like, yeah, for whatever reasons, right? So okay, I'm rambling. I always do this. All right, thanks for watching. I'm gonna click, and then it'll log off. Click, and end for all. Bye.